The hiss of the welding torch cut through the silence, sparks flying as Kara Vance worked on the busted engine of an old freighter. Out here, on the outskirts of the rim, she was used to solitude. The desolate stretch of space known as the Scavenger's Belt was filled with forgotten ships, floating aimlessly after wars, disasters, or piracy. The Iron Star, the ship she was working on today, was no different, rusted, stripped for parts, and long abandoned. A perfect job for a mechanic like her, and exactly the kind of challenge she liked. Kara wiped sweat from her brow, her dark hair tied back in a loose ponytail. The small work lamp above her head cast long shadows through the engine room. There was no crew, no sounds, but the faint hum of her tools and the occasional creak of the ancient hull. Just another day in the belt. "Let's see what we've got here," she muttered, twisting a wrench to tighten a stubborn bolt. But as she focused on her work, a soft beep emanated from her handheld scanner, which was resting nearby. Kara frowned, glancing at the screen. A blinking green light pulsed on the display, a life-form signal. "That can't be right," she said to herself, putting down her tools and picking up the scanner. The Iron Star had been floating dead for years. No way there was anything alive on board. She tapped the scanner, thinking it might be a malfunction. The beep came again. Fainter, but real. Okay, that's strange. Kara felt a small thrill of curiosity spark in her chest. She'd been working out here for years, and things rarely surprised her anymore. Most of the time, she was dealing with shipwrecks and salvage, a life of routine in the dark void. But this was new. Slipping her scanner into her tool belt, Kara set off through the dim corridors of the ship. Her boots echoed as she walked, the metal walls rusted and worn from time. The signal was faint but steady, leading her through winding hallways toward the lower decks, where the cargo holds were located. As she descended into the bowels of the ship, the air grew colder, and a musty scent filled the corridors. The lights overhead flickered occasionally, casting eerie shadows. Kara's hand instinctively rested on the blaster strapped to her hip. The last thing she needed was to stumble into a nest of space rats or worse, some scavenger hiding out in the darkness. Her scanner beeped again, more rapidly this time. She was close. Kara came to a heavy cargo door, half-rusted shut. With a grunt, she pried it open, the metal groaning in protest. Inside, the room was dim, lit only by the soft glow of bioluminescent fungi that had taken over some of the crates. The air was thick with dust, and the smell of damp metal clung to her nostrils. And then she saw them. In the far corner, behind a stack of overturned crates, were two small creatures. They were huddled together, their tiny bodies trembling. Kara froze, her eyes wide in disbelief. They looked like puppies, but not any puppies she had ever seen. Their skin was smooth and almost translucent, with glowing veins of blue and green pulsing beneath the surface. Their eyes, large and round, gleamed in the low light, reflecting back the faint bioluminescence of the room. Their bodies were covered in short, iridescent furs that shimmered in shades of silver and purple. And they were shaking uncontrollably. Kara's heart raced. They were scared, that much was obvious. But why? And what were they doing here? Hey, it's okay, Kara whispered, crouching down slowly, keeping her distance to avoid startling them. Her voice was gentle, a tone she had perfected over years of coaxing stubborn machinery into working. "I'm not gonna hurt you." The pups whimpered in unison, their quivering intensifying as they pressed closer together. They were so small, barely the size of her forearm, and yet their eyes were so expressive, filled with fear, confusion, and something else, something deeper. Kara's instincts kicked in. She couldn't just leave them here. No one knew how long this ship had been abandoned, but judging by its state, it had been years. There was no chance anyone would come back for them. And whatever they were, these creatures weren't supposed to be here. She reached out a hand, moving slowly, giving them a chance to see she wasn't a threat. "It's okay, I'm gonna help you." The nearest pup tilted its head, its eyes locking onto hers. Its glowing veins pulsed brighter for a second, and Kara felt an odd connection, like a faint tug at her emotions. Was it trying to communicate with her? No, that was impossible, or was it? The pup's trembling didn't stop, but it allowed her to come closer. Kara carefully scooped it up into her arms. The creature was light, fragile, and cold to the touch. As she lifted it, the second pup whined softly and scrambled to follow, its tiny paws slipping on the metal floor. Kara quickly cradled them both, feeling their shivering intensify for a moment before it began to ease just a little. "Who left you here, huh?" she murmured, her brow furrowed with concern. "And why are you shaking so much?" The pups nestled against her, still trembling but no longer flinching away from her touch. Their glowing veins pulsed softly, like a heartbeat, but Kara could tell that something was deeply wrong. These weren't ordinary creatures. Whatever they were scared out of their minds or sick, or worse. She had to figure this out, and fast. Carrying them carefully, Kara made her way back to her ship, the Nomad, a sleek, old freighter she had patched together over the years. She placed the trembling pups into a soft, makeshift bed she quickly fashioned from blankets in the cargo bay, setting up a small heater to keep them warm. Her scanner beeped again, flashing error messages as it tried to analyze the pups' biology. Whatever species they were, it wasn't in any known database. They were an enigma, and Kara had no clue how to help them. As she sat down beside the makeshift bed, the pups curled up tightly together, their shaking still constant. Kara's mind raced. Who had left them behind? Why were they trembling like this? And most troubling of all, was there something coming back for them? The Nomad hummed quietly as it drifted through space, the stars outside stretching in long streaks of light as the ship cruised along the hyperlane. Kara Vance sat cross-legged in the cargo bay, her eyes fixed on the two alien pups nestled in the corner. Echo and Nova, she'd named them fitting names, she thought, for the little beings whose faint glowing pulses mirrored the distant stars outside. It had been days since she'd found them aboard the derelict Iron Star, and still, they wouldn't stop shaking. They quivered constantly, as if stuck in an endless state of terror or cold. Kara had done everything she could think of: blankets, heaters, even a low-level force field to block out any stray radiation, but nothing had worked. Kara sighed, running a hand through her dark hair, now slightly disheveled from days of little sleep. She had become consumed by the mystery of the pups, abandoning her usual routine of repairing ships to focus on them. They were unlike any species she'd encountered in her years traveling the galaxy, and the more time she spent with them, the more she became convinced that their trembling wasn't just physical. "I know you're scared," Kara murmured softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She knelt beside the small enclosure she'd created for them in the cargo bay. Echo, the smaller of the two, looked up at her with wide, glowing eyes. The bioluminescent veins in its translucent skin pulsed in slow, rhythmic waves, as if mirroring some inner turmoil. Nova, the larger pup, pressed close to its sibling, whimpering softly. Kara reached out slowly, letting Echo sniff her hand before gently stroking its back. The creature's fur was silky and soft, its body cool to the touch. As her hand moved along its back, she felt the faintest vibration, like a purr, but more nervous, as if it was trying to soothe itself. "I don't know what to do," Kara admitted. Her voice trembled slightly, betraying the frustration that had been building within her. She had always prided herself on being able to fix things: machines, engines, even the occasional medical emergency, but this was different. These pups weren't machines she could tweak or repair with a wrench. They were living, breathing beings with emotions she couldn't understand. Her ship's AI, an older model named Finn, spoke up from the corner of the room, its calm, synthetic voice breaking the silence. "Captain, I have completed the full diagnostic scan of the creatures. Their biological makeup remains unidentifiable, and I have detected no pathogens, parasites, or toxins that could be causing the tremors." Kara glanced at the monitor displaying the results of the scans. Every vital sign was normal: heart rate, respiration, neural activity, but the shaking continued, unabated. So, they're physically fine, Kara muttered, more to herself than to the AI. But if it's not physical, then it's gotta be something else. Psychological, maybe? I cannot confirm that hypothesis, Captain, Finn responded, its voice neutral. However, it is possible that the creatures are experiencing a heightened state of distress. The constant trembling could be a result of extreme fear or trauma. Kara frowned, her thoughts drifting back to the Iron Star. The ship had been abandoned for years, floating in the cold void. There had been no signs of life on board other than the pups, and no indication of who had left them there. The question gnawed at her, why had they been abandoned? And what had they gone through before she found them? She couldn't shake the feeling that something terrible had happened to them. Pushing herself to her feet, Kara headed to the ship's small kitchen, grabbing a protein bar and leaning against the counter as she unwrapped it. She stared out the viewport, watching the stars streak by in the distance. Her mind was spinning with questions. Echo and Nova weren't just ordinary animals, they were more intelligent than she'd initially realized. She had caught glimpses of it in their eyes, the way they seemed to react to her words and movements. There was an understanding there, something that went beyond basic animal instincts. But the shaking, that constant trembling, was what worried her the most. It wasn't random, it followed a pattern. When the ship was quiet, they trembled less. But whenever she approached, or there was a loud sound, the trembling intensified. They were reacting to something, but Kara couldn't figure out what. Her comm device beeped, snapping her out of her thoughts. Kara glanced at the screen and incoming transmission. The signal was scrambled, but the source was clear, a nearby space station. She wasn't far from Horizon Station, a trading post on the edge of the rim, frequented by all sorts of travelers, traders, and scavengers. Maybe someone there had seen creatures like these before. Wiping her hands, Kara tapped the console to answer the call. "This is Captain Kara Vance of the Nomad." A gruff voice crackled through the speakers. "Vance, is that you?" "It's Dre." Kara's face lit up slightly. Dre was an old contact of hers, a fellow mechanic and one of the few people in the galaxy she trusted. "Hey, Dre. What's up? I heard you were out near the Scavenger's Belt. Got any good salvage?" Kara hesitated for a moment, glancing back at the cargo bay where Echo and Nova were resting. "Actually, I found something. Strange. 2 alien creatures, pups, I think. I've never seen anything like them, and they won't stop shaking." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Pups, you say? What do they look like?" Kara gave a brief description, detailing the shimmering veins, glowing eyes, and trembling bodies. Dre didn't respond immediately, and when he did, his voice was lower, almost cautious. "You're saying they're shaking? Constantly?" "Yeah," Kara said, frowning. "Why? Do you know what they are?" There was another pause, longer this time. "Listen, Vance. I don't know much, but I've heard whispers about creatures like that. They call them soul hounds. No one knows exactly where they come from, but they're linked to, well, something bad." Kara's stomach dropped. "What do you mean, something bad?" "I don't know the details, but from what I've heard, those creatures are tied to something ancient, something that hasn't been seen in a long time." "The shaking? That's fear. And whatever they're scared of, it's big. If I were you, I'd figure out where they came from, and fast. You might be in over your head." Kara swallowed hard, the weight of Dre's words sinking in. "Thanks for the tip, Dre. I'll keep that in mind." She ended the call, her mind racing. Soul hounds? Fear? What could these pups have possibly been running from? Before she could process everything, a soft whimper echoed from the cargo bay. Kara rushed back, her heart pounding. Echo and Nova were both trembling violently now, their eyes wide with terror as they stared at something on the wall. Kara's blood ran cold. She turned slowly, following their gaze to the source of their fear. A faint, pulsing glow different from the pups was seeping through the walls of the ship, like some kind of energy trying to break through. "Captain," Finn chimed in, "I am detecting an anomalous signal. It appears to be originating from an unknown source. And it's getting closer." Kara's hand instinctively went to her blaster. Whatever was coming, it wasn't friendly. The glow that bled through the walls of the Nomad sent a chill down Kara's spine. It was faint but growing stronger by the second, a deep, pulsating light that reminded her of the bioluminescent veins running through Echo and Nova's translucent skin. But this glow was different, ominous, foreboding, as though something far more dangerous was pressing in from outside the ship. Echo and Nova were trembling violently now, their tiny bodies curled together in a tight ball, whimpering. They weren't just afraid anymore, they were terrified. "Captain," Finn's calm, robotic voice echoed through the ship's speakers, "the signal has intensified. I am unable to determine its origin, but it appears to be attempting to interface with the ship's systems." Kara felt a surge of anxiety ripple through her chest. "Can you block it?" "I am attempting to, but it is highly advanced. If it continues to escalate, I may not be able to maintain control of the ship's core systems." Kara cursed under her breath. The situation was rapidly spiraling out of control, and she had no idea who or what was trying to get into her ship. Her hand hovered near the console, ready to initiate emergency shutdown protocols, but a sharp yelp from Echo made her freeze. The pups were staring at her with wide, glowing eyes, their bodies shaking so hard they were almost vibrating. She could feel it now, 2A presence, dark and oppressive, creeping into her mind like icy tendrils. It wasn't physical, but it was there, something ancient and dangerous. And whatever it was coming for them. Kara knelt beside the pups, gently placing a hand on Echo's trembling back. "I'm not gonna let anything happen to you, okay?" Her voice was firm, trying to mask her growing fear. She needed to think fast. If Dre's warning was right, these pups were connected to something powerful, and whatever that was had just found them. She rushed to the cockpit, slamming into the pilot's seat and firing up the ship's engines. The ship groaned in response, still sluggish from the alien signal's interference, but it responded to her commands. Kara keyed in the hyperdrive coordinates for the only lead she had, those strange coordinates she decoded from the earlier transmission. Whoever was sending that message clearly knew about Echo and Nova. Maybe they knew how to stop this, too. As the engines roared to life, the glow that seeped through the walls flickered, as if reacting to her decision to move. Kara's heart pounded as she gripped the controls, feeling the weight of the moment press down on her. If she didn't get them out of here fast, that thing, whatever it was, would tear her ship apart. "Finn, engage the hyperdrive. Get us to those coordinates, now." Coordinates locked. Engaging hyperdrive in 3, 2, 1. The familiar rush of acceleration flooded the ship as the stars outside stretched into bright lines of light. Kara felt a lurch in her stomach as the Nomad jumped into hyperspace, leaving the eerie glow behind, at least for the moment. The oppressive presence faded, but Kara knew it was still out there, lurking. Watching. Breathing a shaky sigh of relief, Kara slumped back in her seat. She had bought them some time, but the mystery only deepened. The strange transmission, Dre's cryptic warning about the pups being linked to something ancient, and now this dark force that seemed to be hunting them, none of it made sense. Her thoughts were interrupted by a soft whimper from the cargo bay. Echo and Nova were still trembling, though the violent shaking had subsided somewhat now that the glow was gone. Kara's heart softened at the sight of them, curled up together, their bioluminescent bodies dim but still glowing faintly. "I wish you could tell me what's going on," Kara muttered, kneeling beside them again. Echo blinked up at her with those large, glowing eyes, and for a brief moment, Kara swore she felt something, a fleeting connection, like an unspoken understanding. But just as quickly as it came, it was gone, leaving her grasping for answers. The ship's systems pinged, signaling their approach to the coordinate sheet set. Kara stood, her nerves on edge again as she headed back to the cockpit. The planet that appeared on her view screen was shrouded in swirling clouds of green and gold gas, with flashes of lightning crackling through the atmosphere. It looked hostile, uninhabitable. But this was the source of the mysterious transmission. "Looks like we're here," Kara said quietly to herself, staring down at the planet. There was no sign of any landing pads or civilization, at least none that she could detect. The surface was largely obscured by the thick clouds, and the storms raging across the atmosphere made any approach risky. Finn scanned for any signs of life or structures. A few tense moments passed before the AI responded. "Life form readings detected. The signals are faint but consistent. I also detect what appears to be an energy field of unknown origin." Kara frowned. An energy field? That sounded like trouble, but she didn't have many options. The pups were clearly connected to this place, and if she was going to figure out what was happening to them and stop whatever was after them, this was her best shot. "All right, we're going in." The descent through the planet's atmosphere was rough. The ship bucked and shuddered as powerful winds slammed into its hull, the storm outside battering the Nomad from all sides. Kara gritted her teeth, gripping the controls as she navigated through the turbulence. Lightning flashed around her, illuminating the swirling clouds in brief, eerie bursts of light. Eventually, she broke through the storm, descending toward the surface. What she saw below took her breath away. An ancient structure, half buried in the ground, stretched out before her, a massive, crumbling fortress carved from black stone. Its surface was covered in glowing symbols, similar to the markings on Echo and Nova's skin. The energy field Finn had detected pulsed around the structure, shimmering like a veil of light, making the air itself seem to vibrate. "This must be it," Kara whispered, her eyes wide with awe and trepidation. She landed the ship in a clearing not far from the structure. The storm still raged above, but here on the ground, it was eerily calm, as if the energy field was keeping the worst of the weather at bay. Kara grabbed her gear, her blaster strapped to her side, and gently lifted Echo and Nova into her arms. The trembling had returned, more intense than ever, and Kara could feel their fear radiating through her hands as she carried them. She stepped off the Nomad and onto the planet's surface, the air thick and heavy with strange energy. The ground was soft, almost spongy beneath her boots, and the sky above was a swirling sea of dark clouds, lit only by the occasional flash of distant lightning. The fortress loomed ahead, silent and foreboding. As Kara approached the ancient structure, the air around her seemed to hum with power. The symbols on the fortress walls glowed brighter with each step she took, as if reacting to the presence of the pups. She could feel the energy pulsing through the air, an almost palpable force pressing against her. Suddenly, a low, resonant hum filled the air, and a tall figure stepped out of the shadows. Kara froze, her heart hammering in her chest. The figure was unlike anything she had ever seen, tall, with elongated limbs and a flowing, translucent robe that shimmered with the same glow as the pups. Its eyes were large and glowing, just like Echo and Nova's, but its presence was commanding, regal, and ancient. "You have brought them back," the alien said, its voice resonating in Kara's mind more than her ears. It was deep, layered, as though many voices spoke as one. "They are the last of their kind." Kara tightened her grip on the pups, her voice trembling slightly. "Who are you? What do you mean, the last of their kind?" The alien's gaze softened, and it approached slowly, its towering figure radiating an aura of calm. "They are the guardians of our world, sent away long ago to protect them from the darkness that consumed us. But they have been lost, abandoned until now." Kara's breath caught in her throat as the alien knelt before her, placing its long, delicate fingers on Echo and Nova. The pups stopped shaking instantly, their glowing eyes fixed on the figure as if recognizing it. "They were afraid," the alien said softly. "They trembled because they were alone. But now that they are home, their fear will fade. You have done more than rescue them, human. You have saved the last hope of our people." Kara's mind raced, the weight of the alien's words sinking in. What? What happens now? The alien stood tall once more, its eyes glowing brighter. Now, they will fulfill their purpose. And you, Kara Vance, have earned the protection of the Guardians. Before Kara could respond, the alien turned, leading the pups toward the ancient fortress. She watched in awe as Echo and Nova followed without hesitation, their trembling completely gone. They were home. And though Kara had come to care deeply for them, she knew in her heart that this was where they truly belonged. Kara stood at the entrance of the ancient fortress, the cool wind whipping through her hair as she watched Echo and Nova follow the alien figure deeper into the glowing ruins. The pups no longer trembled. They walked with newfound confidence, their bioluminescent bodies pulsating softly in rhythm with the strange energy that hummed all around them. It was as though the planet itself welcomed them back, recognizing its long-lost guardians. The towering alien, still cloaked in shimmering light, led them across the cracked stone floor toward a large archway engraved with symbols Kara couldn't decipher. She remained on the threshold, unsure of her place in this unfolding mystery, watching as the pups moved toward their destiny. They are the last of their kind, the alien had said. The words echoed in Kara's mind, filling her with a sense of awe and sadness. She had grown attached to the little creatures, caring for them as they quivered in fear, wondering how to protect them from the unknown force that hunted them. Now, here they were home at last, no longer trembling, no longer afraid. Their purpose, which had been obscured from Kara, was clear now. They weren't just pups. They were guardians, powerful, ancient beings with a responsibility to this dying world. But what exactly did that mean? Wait, Kara called out, stepping forward, her voice steady but filled with curiosity. What happens to them now? The alien figure turned slowly, its glowing eyes resting on her with a kind of ancient wisdom. Kara felt a strange connection, as though the alien's gaze saw through her, into the very core of her being. They will restore balance to this world, the alien said in its deep, resonant voice. The darkness that once consumed us is returning, and only they have the power to repel it. Their bond, their light, is the key to our survival. Kara furrowed her brow, taking a few steps closer. But they're just children. They've been alone and scared for so long. How can they possibly be ready for something like this? The alien tilted its head slightly, a gesture that seemed almost human. They are young, yes, but the Guardians are not like other creatures. They carry within them the knowledge and strength of their ancestors. They were sent away to protect them from the devastation that befell our world, so that one day they could return and fulfill their destiny. You have helped them to survive, to overcome their fear. That was your role. Kara's heart sank slightly at those words. She had known, deep down, that her time with Echo and Nova would be short. But hearing it said so plainly made the separation feel even more real. She knelt down, her hand resting gently on Echo's back. The pup looked up at her with those glowing eyes, and for the first time, she saw peace in them, no more trembling, no more fear. "I'm gonna miss you guys," she whispered, her throat tightening. Nova nuzzled her hand, and for a moment, Kara thought she saw a flicker of sadness in their glowing gaze. Maybe, just maybe, they understood more than she realized. The alien approached, its presence towering but no longer intimidating. You have given them what they needed most: hope. Without you, they would not have survived. But now, their path lies here. Kara stood, her mind racing with questions. "And what about that thing out there?" she asked, her voice more urgent. "The dark presence that was trying to get to them. Is it still after them?" The alien's expression darkened, and for the first time, Kara saw a trace of fear in its glowing eyes. "The darkness you felt is the void. It is a force that has existed since the beginning, a hunger that seeks to consume all life. It is what destroyed our civilization long ago. When the Guardians were sent away, it could not find them. But now that they have returned, the void will come again, seeking to finish what it started." Kara's stomach twisted at the alien's words. So, that thing is still out there, and it knows they're back? The alien nodded solemnly. Yes. But they are not defenseless. Here, in their true form, they can harness the light of our world to push back the void. They will fight, as the guardians before them did. Kara's hands clenched into fists at her sides. She wasn't one to back down from a fight, but this was something beyond her. It was bigger than anything she had ever faced. The void wasn't just an enemy, it was a force of nature, a cosmic terror that threatened everything. You said I helped them, Kara said, her voice firm but filled with emotion. But I'm not just going to walk away and leave them to fight alone. If there's something I can do, anything, tell me. The alien regarded her for a long moment, its glowing eyes narrowing slightly as if considering her words. Finally, it spoke. Your bond with them is strong, stronger than you realize. It is rare for one outside our people to form such a connection. You are not a guardian, but you have become something else, something important. Kara blinked, taken aback. What do you mean? The alien gestured toward the pups, who had now turned their attention to her, their glowing eyes watching her intently. They chose you. When you found them, they were lost, their light flickering in the darkness. But you did not abandon them. You stayed, despite the danger, and in doing so, you became their protector. That bond will not fade. Should you call upon them, the guardians will answer. Kara's mind raced as she tried to process the weight of what the alien was telling her. Echo and Nova had chosen her? And now, even though they were destined to stay and defend their world, their connection to her would remain? The alien stepped closer, its gaze soft but serious. The void will come for us, but it is not only our fight. The darkness spreads across the stars, seeking new places to devour. Your world, your people, may one day face its hunger as well. When that day comes, you will need the guardians. Kara swallowed hard. The thought of her world, of humanity, facing something as terrifying as the void made her heart race. She had always thought of the galaxy as a dangerous place, filled with pirates, rogue AI, and the occasional black market syndicate, but this was on a different scale entirely. And how do I call them? Kara asked, her voice softer now. The alien raised a hand, and a faint light appeared, hovering in the air between them. The light pulsed and then solidified into a small, glowing stone. The alien placed it gently in Kara's hand. This is a shard of their light. When the time comes, they will hear it, no matter how far you are. Kara stared at the glowing stone in her palm, feeling its warmth and power thrumming through her fingers. It was a lifeline, a promise that no matter how dark things became, she wouldn't have to face it alone. The alien stepped back, its form beginning to shimmer as the light from the ancient structure grew brighter. It is time. The guardians must begin their work. Kara glanced down at Echo and Nova one last time, her heart swelling with pride and sadness. She knelt, placing a hand on each of their glowing heads. You guys are gonna be amazing, she whispered. I know it. The pups gazed at her with their glowing eyes, and though they couldn't speak, Kara felt their warmth, their gratitude, in the silence. And then, without a sound, they turned and followed the alien deeper into the fortress, disappearing into the light. Kara stood alone now, the glowing stone still in her hand, the hum of the ancient structure echoing in her ears. The wind picked up, and she knew it was time to leave. She made her way back to the Nomad, the familiar hum of the ship's systems comforting her as she prepared for takeoff. As she lifted off the planet, leaving the swirling clouds and ancient ruins behind, Kara couldn't shake the feeling that her life had changed in ways she couldn't yet comprehend. The galaxy was vast, full of unknowns, but now she carried with her the power of the Guardians, a bond that could one day save more than just a single world. As the stars stretched out before her, Kara smiled to herself. She wasn't just a mechanic anymore. She was a protector, too. And she knew, no matter what happened, she'd never be alone in the dark.